Hello, everybody, and welcome to the PureJoy Podcast, episode 15. Holy cow. And as the rest of the episodes today, we're here to talk about joy, to break down someone's joy, see what in their life brings them pure joy, why, and sort of break that down. Hope to find a little bit of, maybe tidbits for our own joys or our own life, and maybe ways to find that in our own life. Yeah. There isn't really much else to do here on the intro. We are here to do the same thing that we are here to do every episode, right? And that is to explore joy. Today, my guest is a listener of the podcast. I think it's our first listener guest. That's absolutely fantastic. Let's switch on over here and get them introduced. Their name is Dusty Dazerling. Let me do just that. Hey, Dusty, how's it going?
I'm going good. How are you, man?
Doing well today. It is, usually we do these recordings at about 7 p.m. for me, and this is in the opposite end of the spectrum because you find yourself in, you live in the UK, correct?
Yes, yeah.
So what time is it? What time is it for you there?
It is just past 5 p.m., almost 10 past 5 now.
It's 10 past 5. Yeah, we're at 11 a.m. here. This is the start of my day. I think this is the first episode I've recorded at the start of my day, which is interesting. We will see how that changes things. Yeah, I really appreciate you making the time to come on out and be a part of the podcast.
I really appreciate being on, man.
Absolutely. We like to start each of these episodes off with a little question, and that is something that you found joy in today, a small joy of the day.
My small joy today has probably just been reorganizing my room. It's started to become an absolute dump, especially with work being super busy. So getting that time just to clear out and organize anything that's not meant to be there is really nice. So just having a brand new clear room is always something good.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been feeling that with my room lately. I've been working a lot more and not had the time to just, mostly for us, it's laundry. We kind of rearrange our room maybe like 2 or 3 times a year, but laundry piles up and I'm the worst at putting it in the basket. Our room is kind of small, so like a piece of laundry on the floor is immediately noticeable.
Same here.
Yeah, so I'm feeling that. I think today is going to be, if I find some opportunity a little bit later today to do just that as well, that would be pretty neat. Let's see. My small joy of the day, I'll say that it hasn't happened yet, but it's something I woke up looking forward to, and that is today is a close friend of mine's birthday. They're all going out to lunch, and then we're all meeting up and doing like a big board game day, and we're gonna have like snacks and maybe a few drinks and play some board games, and I'm just like really looking forward to that, and I've been looking forward to that since I woke up. And yeah, it hasn't happened yet, but I I felt joy in it already today, just like looking forward to this time with friends.
Yeah, that sounds nice.
Yeah, definitely something I'm looking forward to. And just like board games, I feel like a lot of times we maybe we're watching a movie or we're watching TV and we're not really like exchanging a lot, and that's fine. We're spending time together, but yeah, I'm looking forward to playing board games, and we'll have to talk and chat and just really get to like celebrate the birthday as a crew, and that'll be very exciting. With an intro sort of out of the way, what in life brings you pure joy, Dusty?
My pure joy is definitely programming and game development. I've been programming since as long as I can remember, really, and game development has just kind of branched off from that, and it's just been such a thing that's overwhelmed my life. I'm just really excited to just talk about it and explain my point of view in game development. As I know you've talked about media, so it'll be nice to see what happens almost behind the scenes of games and media.
Yeah. We even had a few episodes, about maybe, I guess, 10 episodes ago now. Wow. We had a guest on that was Raven, Trinity Palmer, and she works as a video game developer in like her actual job, or a software developer. And so this was on her list of possible chats, and then she went with motorcycles, one of her her other passions and hobbies. And I was like, I'm interested in both, right? I was interested in that, and very exciting to talk about something I didn't know. And I don't know a lot about this, but I found myself, I was like, ooh, man, that could have been a cool conversation as well. And so I'm very excited that you've brought this on. It's definitely a topic I've been interested in talking about since it was a possibility. So you said you've been doing it for as long as you can remember. What when did that begin? Because computers over the past 20 years even have improved so much that I imagine programming has changed vastly. So when did that begin for you, and what kind of, I'm just curious, what kind of tech were you working with at when it began?
So I started off with quite simple programming, but it's more off of software and more onto hardware. It's something called white hat hacking, which is basically you take a device's original purpose and you try and change it for a non-malicious intent. So currently I have a couple of desktop PCs that I build, and one of them I've basically cut out the power button and changed it to be a massive red stop button. So whenever I turn on the plug at the wall, the PC automatically turns on, and when I'm done with it, I can hit a stop button, it'll stop the PC, which I think is quite funny.
I like that. I feel like it probably was less than a month ago when I looked up the difference between, you said, what is it, white hat hacking and black?
White hat hacking.
And then black hat is
black hat hacking.
The other one where it's the same thing, but you do it for a malicious intent, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. So it started as sort of like white hat hacking. What kind of other stuff? You said you put a stop button in on your PC. What other kinds of white hat hacking did you play around with? If you can, I know that it's
just things on my home phone. So I found out a way where on a payphone, for example, if you played a certain tone, it registered as you've paid money. So during my school time, if I ever needed to call someone, for example, I could do it for free, which was quite nice.
That's so cool. So cool. Wow. Okay. That's really neat. So how did that begin to sort of evolve into what you have going on today?
Well, from white hat hacking, I then learned from the internet, really, about all of these other different types of programming that I could do, and started learning through a few programs. I think my first program that I ever learned, which was a drag and drop program made for children. I think it was called Scratch or something. And from there, through school, I learned Python, and now I'm learned JavaScript and C.
Did you go to school for programming and develop hardware software development?
I haven't specialized in any sort of software development yet, but during my school time, I did take any classes I could on sort of programming or computer sciences, things like that, and just really interested in the technology of STEM. And that's just kind of how it went with my life. I was always interested in that. It's just evolved, really.
Yeah. So what do you find yourself doing now? What is where does this sit in your life now? What kind of work, I guess, are you doing with it? You said it's kind of evolved from, basic programming into sort of a game development stage. What talk a little bit about that.
Currently I work as a software developer for a company, and soon in the near future, I believe it's only 6 months now, which is crazy, they're flying me across the world to a small country called Singapore to present my ideas and what we've been working on with my team.
Oh, wow.
For, I think, past maybe 12 months.
Okay.
14 months. Yeah.
This is a game your team has been working on?
It's a piece of software that we've been working on. But I don't do game development as my job. It's more of a hobby for me, or passion.
Okay.
But it's a piece of software that I can't get into, really, unfortunately.
No, of course.
Non-disclosure agreements.
No, of course.
We've been working on it for the past over a year now, and in less than 6 months, I'm flying to Singapore and getting a free 2-week holiday with this, which is quite nice.
Woo!
And
A work holiday.
Yeah, I work for 4 weeks while I'm out there, and then I get an extra 2 weeks either side to have some time to myself, which would be quite nice.
Whoa! So you're gonna be there for like 6 weeks?
6 weeks, yeah.
Wow! Holy cow! So how did you? When we were chatting just before this, just before we came on the recording, and I had sort of asked you about what you do for work. You had mentioned that you work with the Scouts organizations, and is this like a second job? You have 2 jobs here?
So my secondary job is with the Scouts organization, which is but mainly volunteer based.
Oh,
and then on the weekends I'll do cleaning for them. But my main job is through my software development and a company I work for.
Yeah. Is that something that you picked up like right out of school? You said you did some studies. My grasp of the schooling system is entirely based on America's schooling system. As like a brief overview, what is the like brief structure of the UK schooling system? Just so I know what I'm talking about.
I believe each grade is one number lower than the years that we have here. So your grade 1 is our year 2.
Okay.
But
because kindergarten for us would be your year 1.
But do you guys have like a preschool? We have like a preschool, which is like in the key stage is known as EYFS or early years something.
So at least I'm pretty sure this is how it still works. I think I heard of my niece doing the same structure, is that like there is a preschool option, and then it goes kindergarten, which I think would be your year 1, which is just like we're 5 years old. You know, it's the first structure we have. At least I had in a classroom.
Year 1.
Yeah, we learned letters, we learned numbers in a classroom setting rather than like, teaching over a book or So yeah, I think that would be that. Okay, so we are a year behind. So when we're a senior in high school, that would be year 13 for you guys?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so that's us in what we call sixth form.
Okay.
So I started learning about programming specifically when I was in year 5 or grade 4.
Oh, okay.
So very, very young. But at the time I was more interested in the sciences. It was still quite a big like passion for me.
Yeah.
It would have been more of a hobby at the time. And then as I learned more of my sciences in your high school, I realized that I just didn't enjoy it as much as I thought I did. I like it as like almost like from an engineering side. I like to tinker, but I wouldn't really do it as like a degree or as just like a what we call a GCSE. And so for my GCSEs, my GCSE, I did a computer science course, which is a 2-year course where you learn about the internals of a computer, how they all function, all the way up into operating systems and softwares and programming. It's like an overview of the computers and networks. It's quite interesting to me.
Okay, yeah. So you so from 4th grade for us, year 5 have been at least tinkering with the idea of programming. When you said you haven't specialized, would that be like college for us?
Yeah, I believe your college is like our universities.
Okay, so
because we have college in England, but it's at what we call an A level. Basically, you do your GCSEs, which is like it's almost I don't know how to describe it, but it's like half of your high school is our GCSEs, and the other half is our A levels.
Okay, so am I correct in thinking, based off that you've done up to A levels?
Yeah. So I did A levels, and then I went into work.
Okay.
So my time in A levels, I was also doing a work apprenticeship. So I was learning 2 days a week and working the rest of the week. From 16, you can go into work, but you have to still be in education. So it could be that you just learn for a day a week or 2 days a week and then work for the rest of the week.
What? That is incredible. I mean, there's work there's work here at 16. You can even get like a work permit at, I think I got mine at 14.
Mm.
Where you're legally allowed to work, but with the work permit you have to go to school full time. It has to be a part-time job. Like there's so many different bits, but that I imagine would
Yeah.
be what the intention was. But what that turns into is 16-year-olds working at McDonald's and Walgreens and Walmart and you know what I mean? Like the gas stations, stuff like that. Not gas stations because we were too young to work in gas stations, but the places that we could work at 16. It wasn't ever pushed to us like a learn a craft kind of situation. It was
I
you're
think
16.
England's quite different there. It's quite forward. You could go into work from the age of 16, and as long as you're still learning until you're 18 and get some sort of like proof of that you've learnt between 16 and 18, they're happy.
Wow.
I think that's just the government trying to collect more taxes on us, but you never know.
It might be, now you're paying work taxes and stuff, and if you're working full time, now you're paying full-time taxes at the age of 16. But I feel like what it sounds like to me is that, I mean, like even at one point I had 2 jobs. I was working at a Walgreens in high school and a McDonald's right across the street. And so like all that was just hours of non-studying and not learning and making a small amount of money, enough to like pay for the things I wanted to do for fun. But like, it seems like you went right into, you said that is programming where you did your apprenticeships during that time?
So my apprenticeship was software development, which just meant that I was really leaning into the programming and software development. And through the job, I learned C, I learned Java, a lot more of JavaScript and HTML. And then because you're just getting paid, it means that you're out of the house every day. It's for those the people really that feel like they have the responsibilities to just work straight away, which I felt I was always like edging to get to work. I remember I was very excited on my I think it's like my 14th birthday, that I was like, oh yes, I can work at my like local paper round now. I can work at the small shop that's by my house. And then at 16, I got really excited that I could go work again. So I think I've just always been interested in the working life and just being outside of education, really.
Yeah, definitely. So you got started on that early, and then after you graduated or after you finished your A levels, did you move into this company that you're working for now? I'm not trying to, of course, pry anything that you can't talk about, but was that sort of the path for you?
So I did an apprenticeship through a local company that does software development in my small town, and then I did what's the Royal Air Force Cadets on the side as something that I quite enjoy. And next year, once I've come back from doing my work in Singapore, I will join them to volunteer as what's called a non-commissioned officer, which would be quite fun. So I'll go there, volunteer and help out, and it just means that I'm planning lessons and working with children to just inspire them to do lots of different things and learn lots of skills with them, really. As I just really enjoyed being there and learned lots of skills.
Yeah.
And because of it, I've now got a license to shoot shotguns, which I just think is always really fun.
It's just neat, right?
Yeah. I barely use it, but it's I still have it. It's quite fun.
Yeah, it would be kind of frightening if you were like, and I use it all the time.
Yeah.
I've never used anything.
I make sure I carry it around with me.
Because I have the license. Why programming? Why game development? Why has that, do you think, stuck around? What about that brings you pure joy or makes you feel, I don't know, like content in working in it or passionate to keep working in it?
I guess just the games, really, for me. I was always interested in all sorts of games, like video games, board games. And lots of my inspiration now for games that I do work on come from board games, because I just think that's a really cool concept. I wonder if I did this instead and then made it into a game that just for myself, that would be really cool. So lots of the time it's just hey, look, this is a really cool board game I found. I play it for a few weeks and go, what if I did this? And then I do it, and it's just always so much fun. And I send my friends some copies through Steam, and we all have some fun.
Wow. Okay, so then you just do it, and then you get to like, it's not just a what if, but it's you get to actually, you have the skills to make that happen and to check out what if.
Yeah. There's lots of different things that I just do. It's just like, I like to be able to just think, what if I could do this and actually do it, rather than, what if I could this? That's a cool thought. I'll carry on with my day now.
Yeah, when I was in high school, I was pretty on the track of wanting to do software development. My goal was to go to hardware software development, and things changed and I didn't, but I kind of fiddled around with it. Then I remember when I was like really young, I even made some board games. I've always been into that. Lately, my thoughts have been on how to craft my own tabletop role-playing game, sort of like a D&D or a, that kind of thing, right? Something that is just like 50 pages of how to play, and then people can do what they want with that. And I love that. I love that so much. But just every system I try, there's one thing or two things that I'm like, ooh, I like this thing so much, but there's these other things that kind of make the system not really what I'm after. It doesn't scratch the right itch in all the places. And so I've always been very passionate, I think, about creating those experiences for myself as well, or attempting to, or trying to develop the skills to. I'm happy that that's sort of situated now with role-playing games, because that's where I would say my biggest experiences with over the past few years. But yeah. What about the board games? What about video games draws you to them? Because I feel like, with software development, you could make so many things. With development and designing, you could do so much. What about board games and video games draws you there?
I don't know, really. I guess it was just like how I grew up. I grew up where my dad was always really, really busy. It's just something that I could do. And when I was always at childminders, they just had games that I could play around with. And there was always people there, and people changed around, and parents brought in new children to play with. So I guess that just because of lots of my evenings were spent there playing with the people that I now know very well and still hold contacts with to this day, I guess it's just sprouted from there, playing games. And then my dad stopped working as much due to an illness, and from there I started playing with him. So I guess it's just like almost like reliving my childhood and carrying on with the dream of just playing games and having fun with friends.
That is absolutely lovely. Absolutely. Like a nostalgic feeling of joy. It just has brought you joy throughout your life. And so it's easy to sort of return to that feeling now, right? Maybe when you're having a tough time, or when you're struggling, maybe even just like playing a game to remind yourself of those good times. Even if it doesn't bring up an exact memory, it can bring up the feeling of like what it was like, sitting in that room playing on that TV or with that specific board game, and what that, brings up. I saw a video recently that like brought up so much old feelings of nostalgia for like old game design. And it was a video kind of detailing the difference between modern pixel art and retro pixel art, and how, when they designed things back then, they designed the images that they drew and that they made on the computer were blurrier than what we were seeing, because they were split up by these like tiny outlines of black pixels. There's all these tiny black edges of these pixels, and that is what creates the definition for us. Whereas now we don't see that anymore, and so we develop pixel art in square form because we don't have that extra layer. And that's so intriguing to me. And I don't know really why that thought was brought up. Have you ever messed with any of that kind of like pixel art in your games? What kind of art do you use or play with when you're designing?
The first art that I ever did was through Python and an engine on Python called Turtle. And Turtle was just pixel art, really. It could be practically anything you could code it to be. it was just a small blob on a screen, and you could change the color, and you could have it change colors as it was moving and things like that. So, and from there, it became really just what couldn't I do? And then while I was doing my course at a GCC level, I found out that you could change what the turtle looks like and add lots of different turtles. So I made a very, very simple game where it was literally you click. It was like hit the rat arcade game sort of thing, or like splat the rat, something like that. And you just take your mouse and try and click a rat before it disappears. And that just something just as simple as that, made in a 10 by 10 pixel grid, just felt like really nice to be able to do and know that, hey, look, this is the first thing I've ever been able to do, and it's really cool. From there, I've learned to appreciate all sorts of different genres, from like the anime or cartoony styles to more realistic styles of games. I think my favorite like art style that I've used quite a bit in my games now is almost like a mix of cartoon noir style. So it's more grayscale than color, or more grayscale than black and white, with very small splashes of color. But it just has like a really like a vibe to me that I just really appreciate. I think in the games that I've used it in, it just works so well with the lighting and with the design, and how the only things that I ever color on the game are the main focus as well. So you could have like the background almost be dark and grey, but then that small thing in the middle of your screen that you want the player to look at is it just the smallest bit of color. I think it just works so well. I really enjoy just using it and just messing around and seeing what other combinations of color and grayscale, or what could I make grayscale and still people be able to recognize looks well, really.
That's fascinating. I love color theory. I find that they talk about like the difference of like tetrachromats, and I think the other one is trichromat. And that is based on the amount of rods in your eyes and how you perceive color. I have, in all the little tests I've done, of course, never professionally, but in all the little tests I've done, I can see all the colors, and I love color, and color is huge to me. I wear a lot of gray and black and white because when I wear a pop of color, I like it to be a pop of color. You know what I mean? I like it to show something for me for the day, and that's not necessarily like a fashion thing, but it's more of like a mood thing, right? It's always based on like how I want to portray my mood. I don't think I ever like consciously am like, I am happy today, so I'm gonna go for yellow or orange, but like, when I'm happier, I reach for the orange shirt or whatever. I think
that
like
a subconscious mood checker.
Exactly. And I think that using the saturation and the coloring in a lot of video games is generally really high. It's very vibrant. It's very, and even when it's dark, right, the pops of color are there, but it still is. It's a vibrant dark. It's like a blue black. It's like the losing track of the light kind of black, and not like a gray or black, because gray is kind of shadowy. You can get more closer to black and have it be shadows, and that gives, of course, an impression. But to pick those moments and those little points to like pinprick with color, my brain is like really able to pick that up, because I'm a big fan of the noir style, and like imagining like in black and white a red handkerchief coming out like is beautiful, right?
I just love that.
It just pinpricks it. I would be fascinated to just like look at screenshots of that kind of art, just to like, I very much enjoy that kind of art. And intrigued about like, what if, how when you look at like an image of like a cityscape, how there's like twinkling lights everywhere, right? What if like, you're scanning across this like black noir scape, there's the black and whites creating the city, but you have like pinpoints of like, this window is blue because there's some lights going on. You can kind of see shadows of people in it. And there's like a tree over here that's just green, not too, right? Like, because before you're using it in the foreframe to really draw your attention to this. But now I think there's opportunity for you to use that style and do many things, right? Not just to draw focus, but also to lessen the focus in some cases, because sometimes you don't want it to be so focused. It's just really fascinating. My mind is like going on all the uses of just like tiny pops of color. I really like that.
Yeah. One of the background arts that I have for one of my games that my friend made, actually, which was really nice of him, is the background is just like a bedroom. And I don't want to get too much into the game because I don't really want someone to steal my idea and then that's lots of work gone. But this person, the persona, is in a bedroom, and the only thing that's got color to it is the screen of the bed, like the screen of the computer on his desk, and everything else is just background noir style, and it's just the background for the menu of the game, and it looks so good.
Oh,
and
that's so cool.
When I first saw it, I was so excited. Didn't quite fall out my chair, but sort of like stood up too quickly and hit myself on my desk.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That's incredible. That's awesome. And just as like a background start menu is like, the moment you said that, I was like, whoa, that's really cool. Cause I was like, what scene are we going for here? But like, boom, right away, you said that. I was like, that's perfect. I don't even know what the game is, but that sounds like, I can imagine like a little bit of since we're talking about like dark, maybe like some lightly creepy, maybe pretty, almost 8-bit music in the background.
Yes.
Absolutely. I'm immediately drawn into the world with just a description of the image. So that's fantastic. That's fantastic. I like that a lot.
I was very happy when the art came in, because I have another friend that loves animation and rendering different like animatory bits. And they said that they could take the background of the start menu and transition it into the first scene in the game. And when I saw that as well, just the absolute joy that came to my face, seeing that it just fits so well to have your menu, you click play.
And it kind of fades out.
Very small cutscene. It doesn't even fade out. So imagine the camera is just facing one side of the room, and then the camera twists round to the computer screen, and that's the first scene in the game.
Yeah, you hit start, and the camera just moves in the same scene, and now we're still in this room, but we're in it now. That's really cool. Yeah. That brings you right into the world. That's really cool.
I think that works really well, and I love games that can do that as well. Because it means that you're never looking at a loading screen. You're never really, you're not the player playing the game. You are the persona of that game. You are the person that the game developer or the people making the game are trying to put you into. And it allows you to really immerse inside the scene or whatever you are in. I just think it works so well. And just those two things for a game that I don't really want to get into just works so well. It's just such a great feeling to see that just come together.
Yeah.
It's just a very small snippet of a game. It's not even the actual game, just the start menu and a cutscene.
But I mean, it goes to show that, like, while not every moment is capitalized upon, that every moment could be important. And if it's about which points of that you choose to make important. Because in this world, like, maybe it makes sense to have a different kind of start menu too. Of course, I'm not trying to like, draw more information out, of course. And I recognize why we're not trying to like, hey, here's all my ideas. But, it could make sense to have a different kind of start menu. Maybe an old cell phone comes up and you like can cycle to your inventory or something along those lines, or just like something to fit in this world and change the lighting a little bit. And it just seems like you've created a good thing to build off of. To you've built off of it. I'm imagining already, but you've created this really good moment in this structure, and that's really cool, and that I think can provide a lot to a world. Do you like making, is the type of games you're into making, I know you said you make like some versions of board games for you and your friends to try out on Steam, but as far as like video games go, are you after like these short, I'm imagining like short, powerful story games?
I've always appreciated story games as something that solo, multiplayer, whatever it is, just like having a great story to a game, I feel like really brings it out. Especially for people who don't have the attention to watch a movie. I feel like that's like your next best thing. You can pause whenever and go grab a drink or go grab some food, come back and just be immersed in a story that's almost film-like, but yet you are the person deciding. And every time I make a game, I'll make a flow chart of how I want the story to go. And the flow chart for this specific game that I'm talking about is it's extensive, to say the least. There's lots of different branches, and I feel like that just works so well for a game, because you've run through it, and if you even change one answer, it's now like a brand new game. And I think that's really nice to have games where you can play it again and again and again and still never repeat yourself.
Sort of like, I mean, while you could, but sort of like the mortuary assistant, where you like come in, maybe like the clue is randomized and like based on how you find what clue and in what order is how the thing kind of plays out. And so your ending, there's a number of endings you can reach. Yeah. I very much enjoy that. That just, I feel like leans much more into the being the persona of the character you're playing, right? It's not of course there's it is a story, and there is a set story here because that is the nature of it. But in being able to play through it, the story in any which way that you can opens it up to like really actually experience that as the person, right? It's what would I do in this situation and not what I have to do to make this happen.
Yeah. I always like to just add little Easter eggs to my game, even if it never affects the game or the story. So for this game, though the actual computer screen and what's happening on it is the main focus, there's an Easter egg where you can shut down the computer, and then instead of your mouse controlling the mouse on the computer, it's now controlling you looking around in the room. And just having little Easter eggs where you can just interact with the room slightly, like turn on a light or look at some books on a bookshelf or a painting or look out the window, just something like that. I just feel like find this quite immersive, and it means that whenever you are playing, you're not confounded to what the game developer has set for the story. It's how you want to play the game.
Yeah, exactly. It's like it's what is my favorite thing, and also I would say the hardest thing about playing like Dungeons and Dragons or tabletop role playing games is being told like that you can do anything makes it difficult to do something, right? Because it's so open and vast. But once you like get used to that and how that feels and what that means, then you start, making choices based on like this character you've built or your own choices. And I find that when I'm given that opportunity as a player, or I give that opportunity as a DM or whatnot, it creates a much more interactive story for me as a player or my players to exist in when they are making the choices. When I'm not saying that you will go and attack this dude because that is what makes sense to me. It is, this dude is here. What do you want to do? If you want to join him, do your thing. I'll make a story around that. And that's the benefit of playing on the spot is that I'm making that game as we're going. So that's beneficial to being in a tabletop. But like as of creating it as a video game, you create as many options as you can to allow for them to take a left rather than a right. Like, let's go explore the end of the hall versus the staircase that we obviously have to go down.
Yeah.
And maybe we don't. Maybe something will happen over here that we're done with the staircase idea entirely, and I wasn't expecting that, and that's incredible. Maybe now I go back to my computer because I have to deal with some stuff that I may not have gotten that email or whatever if I had gone downstairs. Or there's so many possibilities when you start actually like opening up that idea and not just like, this is the story I want you to explore, but like it's about how you explore that story, right?
Yeah, I like to try and keep the playtesters that I source out the games to make tests instead of just testing it myself. Because I find if you test it, you can miss quite a bit of bugs because you just know where it's meant to go. I find playtesters actually just prodding around, seeing what they can do and how they play the game is much better than the developer themselves. So I have a few friends that help me playtest, and then I often try to hire a few people off of Fiverr or somewhere just to see what they think of it. And because lots of my friends know that I put Easter eggs into my game, so they're often prodding around trying to find the Easter eggs. I find that the playtesters that I hire They sometimes they're quite like my friends and like to look around the story and see what else can they do. And others, I'll just play through the game and then I'll send you what I find, and that's really it. So I think it's interesting to see the different types of players as well. Do you just follow the storyline to see what happens, or do you just see what sort of Easter eggs you can find and what's been hidden? On the computer, I've put a very simplified version of MS Paint on there for just like a laugh to see what people create. I think I've set it up so if you do stuff that's not part of the story, which is something funny, you can get an achievement for it, which I think it just shows what type of people they are. So I get a few statistics to see like what type of person has just played the game, because I can see everyone's player data and what achievements they have got.
That's fun. I personally, as a player, love achievements. It gives me something to push for beyond like completing the game, right? I love an achievement. And from your point of view, I never really thought about achievements from the game designer's point of view and how helpful that could be, especially in these like play tests.
Find some Easter eggs are too well hidden, and then at that point it's how could I change this to make it more available to players, or what do I do as like a game designer to bring attention to people in like the background? Do I have like a file on the computer, for example, that's just like a little hint that says, hey, by the way, you can shut down this PC and look around? Or do I just bring the item to the foreground, for example? So I did have an item in the room which was just, I think, like a globe that you could just click and it will spin around, and then it will tell you what it landed on. And it was too well hidden into the background on a shelf, and people thought that you couldn't interact with it, and it was just the art. So I brought it and put it on the desk. So now the people that do look outside the PC can quickly see that, hey, look, there's something there. I wonder if I can interact with it. And you can. And I think that's just, it allows me to see what's too well hidden, what looks like art instead of part of the game, and what is just hidden enough where achievement seekers could find it.
That's a really good point of view to look through. It's interesting to me whenever I find an article that's like, this game has been out for 20 years and someone just found this Easter egg for the first time. There's other Easter eggs they found. No doubt we found 10, 15 other Easter eggs, and that we were focused on those, and we didn't know to look under this pile of scrap metal that is generally we can't go into, but this one for some reason we're able to walk through, and that leads to, I don't know, an Easter egg. And that is always fascinating to me. Like when you start finding Easter eggs, you start thinking like there's something more hidden here. Like if I can spin this globe, I might be able to touch that book on the shelf. And if I can open and touch that book on the shelf, what's to say that the rest of these books might not have an Easter egg in them? For like story games like that, I find myself exploring a lot more. If we're talking about like a long form exploration game, like a Skyrim, for example, just as any off top, like I find myself not, I don't look at every book on the shelf because I know every book on the shelf is readable. I don't look at all the tables because I know I can steal the pewter bowls and do all that stuff. So it's past sort of, why would I interact with everything if I can interact with everything? So there's a balance there, right?
I have this little Easter egg that I put into every single game, and it's the same Easter egg.
Yes.
And I plan to do something with it, like eventually, like somehow collect the data to see, have you found this Easter egg? And it will, you get like a free copy for a game to like show all of the Easter eggs that you've collected throughout all of my games, which would be quite funny. And it's just a puzzle piece.
That is a really cool. It's almost like a signature on your games, right? Like this is just a really cool, unique thumbprint that you put in. That's really cool.
The original, the first ever Easter egg was the game developer's name. So I think having my own little signature, which it's just a puzzle piece, but I plan to make a game where if you've gone through all of my games, found the puzzle piece in every single one, and it tracks that you have found it, for example, then it will show you the puzzle that you've created.
So cool. That's so cool. That's really cool.
I thought I'd share that one.
Yeah, I mean, wow, that is fun. It's really ambitious. but also it's not
Yeah.
like it seems ambitious if you just tell someone that idea. Every game I make is going to have this Easter egg. You're like, whoa, hold on,
Yeah.
that's big. But like, you're developing a game or two at a time, right? You do a couple projects. Maybe you have a few in the back burner that are just like in files, and you can add in that Easter egg as you go at any point. And then also having it interactive. Like, I found the Easter egg here, and that goes into another file that tells me on this other game you gave me a free copy of. I didn't have to buy it. That's fantastic. I can now begin to see the collection outside of this game, because it's almost like a Pokedex, right, for Pokemon, but across the thing. It's like Pokemon Home almost. That's really cool. And for like little story games too. I don't mean to say little in the diminutive way, but little as in like, you know, we're not talking about like a 4-hour or, you know, like a week long of play. We're talking about an enjoyable story that I sit down to do.
Yeah, I think most of my games at the minute that I have either published or only shown to friends, they're probably about 2 hours maybe. So you could do it in one sit down, but it's still quite immersive, and it allows me to build upon it. So the game that I've been talking about, the plan is, if it does well on the release and people enjoy it, I can add to the story, and I can either add it as like another game that you get,
part 2,
and that continues the story, or I do it as like a game add-on. I can't remember what they're called now.
Sort of like it would imagine to me, or it would play to me more like Life is Strange episodes, or the Walking Dead game episodes, where you just sort of buy, or you know, for, you know, maybe just release another episode and people come out and download that episode, and we're still playing in the world. It's obviously, if you haven't done the main game, why would you want to play episode 2? But, you know, if you do, there you go. You're in a story.
I think I like the idea of having the same story but different sub-stories. For every add-on that I have planned that I might make, that it is a completely separate story, but it still links into the first one. So it's this has no effect on the main like story, but
it's another episode in that story.
Yeah, if you want to see what happened with this, now you can. For example,
okay.
It's like almost like backstories to characters.
Yeah.
In a way. So, you know, like you like characters that you find along episodes, and then they just happen to be there, and you don't really know where they came from. It's almost like a backstory into their entire life.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. It gives you a full sort of connection to these characters. You get to learn more about them. It's not just like, why are they sending me an email if we're on the computer? Why are they in my room? But like, how did they come to send me my email? You know, not that that's something you may have ever thought about before as a gamer, but now if you're giving me a game and I'm like, now I know this is important. This email from Cassandra, while I may have put it off, now I know that Cassandra was an important person. Maybe there's more information in that email than I gathered the first time, to a Easter egg or to the next, I don't know, phase in that episode. I take
lots of inspiration from games that I watch or play. I think that the inspiration for this specific game that we've been talking about for a while was a small game. It was very much story-based, but you worked as a tech support agent, and the storyline was that the company that you worked for was corrupt, and you could either choose to be a loyal employee, or you could choose to go against the company and help this organization take down the company. And that was the first inspiration I got. And then for the signatures for my game, the inspiration was from another game. I think it's called There Is No Game. In that game, there's puzzle pieces that you can collect. And then if you collect all of them, it will show you like a game art that you can download and just have for like almost like a memoir of the game, even when you've fully completed it. And I like the idea, so I kind of took it and then adapted onto it, and that's how it came to one in every game.
That's a really cool mechanic, especially like coming across like a whole portfolio is really really neat. The most challenging What's been the most challenging thing to software develop that you can talk about?
I guess every now and then you come into some sort of really cool idea and you think, oh, this is going to work so well. You know it will, but the challenge is how can I implement it into the game? Or this is going to be very complicated. So I think lots of my challenges come from what can I do to learn this skill, because it's not widely found as a tutorial. So it's now I'm scraping through lots of different tutorials to get different bits of information that I need to create this idea. So I think that's like a real challenge, because you can never learn a language. Like English, for example, you never know every single word in the English language and its definition. With programming, it's the same thing. You'll never learn the entire language of programming. You may understand the fundamentals of it, and you may understand a more complex, or have a more complex understanding of it, so you don't really have to look at tutorials to do what you want to do. But there's always a time where you could post something on Stack Overflow and get 0 responses, and then Stack goes, hey, look, no one can answer this. We're going to have to take it down to keep the servers from filling up. And then you know that it's now going to be quite a while to try and figure out how it works. There was this game developer or this software developer that I know, and he makes games on Scratch still. He writes them all in I believe it's C, but he can upload it to Scratch as like a little plugin thing. So he basically just does it to inspire children. Like, look, this is what I managed to do. You could do this too if you learned.
Yeah.
And in all of his games, he has a commentary. And for that one game, because it was inspired from Getting Over It, he basically made this version where he used all of the Scratch library of characters and just items and different things you can get from that library of assets, really. And he remade Getting Over It with those assets as like the game art and the mountain instead. In his commentary, he talks about how he really likes the idea, but the only issue was programming the hammer, because the way that it worked is he had lots of different sections of the character split up to make the maths easier for Scratch. With Scratch, you can't pause any scripts, and it's capped at 30 frames per second. So it's a very simplified version to now, where games you can pause scripts, you can stop them completely, and then they just won't run until you call upon them again. And the issue is learning how to do that in a way where you can simplify it down and it still works. So I think in the end he made it so, like, the cauldron that you normally sit in is one sprite. The arms are two separate sprites. The body is a sprite, the head is a sprite, and the hammer is a sprite or a character. When it's rendered, they all look like they're stuck together. But when the game actually renders it, it's lots of different things, and it's just how he had to do it. And because it took him so long to figure out that and then also get it to work, it quickly fell down the back burner of just different games that, oh, that was cool, but I've run into a problem, and at the minute it's just not my main focus, so it just fell down the list of unpublished projects for him.
Yeah.
And one day he got the inspiration to try and fix it and finish the game, as he was clearing out a bunch of files of his old projects. Dorton's like, oh, this would be really cool if I could actually fix this. And it took him about half a year more, just because it was such a hard challenge. But he came out on top, and it was such a great game and really well made in the end. And it's just things like that where you can just know that, oh, this is going to be hard, but if I really work on it and collect the knowledge I need, I know it can happen, and I know it will look good. And that's just always such a nice feeling.
So the challenge may be less in an aspect of the game and more be just in that, like, as a designer, you find yourself to be rather ambitious sometimes, or like your creative, your creative brain is a little bit more ambitious than the skill set that you have at some points. And so it's just about developing your skill further to allow for that.
Yeah. It's always nice to know when there is a tutorial that you can look through and help you.
Of course.
It feels much nicer to have a time where you're like, hey, I had this problem And though I looked through tutorials, they never really helped. And eventually I got over it, and it just worked so well. And as a programmer and a game designer, it's always nice to know that almost like your ambition can be fed, and it just turns out into such a great thing. It could be the smallest thing as well. So in one of my games, the problem that I had was getting the camera movement on cutscenes to line up so it didn't have to do a loading screen at all, and it just looks like one movement.
Mm-hmm.
And the issue was, how can I get this to work so it's not just good for only high-end PCs, it's good for every PC, low-end to high-end, minimum requirements to the maximum you can get in a PC, and it just always works. And I thought to myself, and it took me a long time to figure it out, and eventually I found a really old thread on Stack Overflow that sort of related to my topic, and using that and some other knowledge over the course of about a month, I finally managed to get it to work, and it just always feels so nice. And then as a player, you never really recognize that it took someone, let's say, like 3 months to get that cutscene to work, and they had the joy of having it work for the first time, but you just see it as another cutscene that you might even skip through.
Yeah. I've found that like a big portion of people's joys kind of come across like, yes, it's something that they've done for a while. It's something that they find passion in, but also at some point it's something that challenges them and gives them a hurdle to overcome. Whether that be I need to try harder or practice or get better at the way that I do it, or whether that's I need to learn more. I need to get an expert that can teach me, whatever that be, through tutorials, or I need to puzzle it together. I need to watch 10 tutorials and figure out what parts are right for me. Just like overcoming those hurdles seems to give people more joy in the thing that they find joy in, right? Being able to successfully, even if you haven't completed a project or you're not done with the thing you're doing, it gives you a milestone, right? A milestone of joy. Like, I've done this thing. That's one hurdle that I don't have to worry about anymore. If I need to do this again, I can either copy and paste, or I know how to do it so fast.
I think as well, like, once you've learned it, it's always nice to know, hey, I learned this like a month ago, and now I'm using it again, and I don't have to go through the pain of trying to find it. And it's almost like a small joy that you keep coming towards every few months, knowing that, hey, I can now recall upon this skill that I learned a while back, and I know it's going to work because I've tried it before. And as a programmer, I often look through my old projects to learn from my mistakes, learn what went wrong, and also just to refresh my memory on like different things that I've done and now forgotten about, so I don't have to look them up again and relearn them. It's almost like you're revising still for an exam.
Right. I struggle a little bit with going back and watching past things. Maybe it's because I do so much editing of my own stuff like this. I'm going to go back and listen to a bunch for hours and, cut down, make just right for the podcast and make it all happen. So I like, once I release the episode, I've yet to go back and listen to one, because I've listened, I'll listen to the final cut, of course, before I hit render. Nothing's going to change between that and the posted version. But I find that is where I'm like, all right, and I am ready to move on. But I think it would be really good to go back and listen. Like, I use that time as my, what would I do better next time? So like while I'm editing this, I'll think of like, a lot of it has been like how I vocally pause and how I can stop myself from doing that and speak more eloquently as I'm going, just sort of learning about that. And then now I, go back and I'll listen to this episode and I'll say like, whoa, compared to the last episode, like I have lessened. It's never gone, but I've lessened like how many ums I say, how many ands I say, my run-on sentences. And, in the beginning I kind of interrupted a little bit. People would be talking, I'd be like, oh, that's like this one time. And I've learned how to like listen. That's like a skill I've picked up, is just like listening. And so like that, I think overall is kind of pointed at the more that you do these things and the more you go back and you go over the work that you have done, the more that you can pick up. And it's great to be open to that. I think I just get a little nervous, like re-listening to myself over and over again, but it's great to be open to going back and like learning from your mistakes. You know, after I put something out, I don't want to know that there was a mistake in there, because then I feel bad. I'm like, well, why don't I just go fix it? It's because it's already out. I can't go fix it. It is what it is. Next time, what I'll do right here is X, Y, and Z, so that it is that mistake isn't had. And being able to learn from those mistakes is a very powerful skill, especially one for, you know, developing a skill over a long period of time like you've been doing.
I think with game developers as well, going back is important, because you do need to, like I said, just refresh your memory constantly. It allows me to also just appreciate how well something turned out, or how long it took me, and just like the nostalgia of going back and remembering the feeling of it all just coming together and finally working, and doing that final test where I test everything together rather than each small segment. Just that feeling of being able to play through a game or look back at some code and remember a memory where it just filled with joy because something just worked, or something that's worked for the first time in months. It's always something like that it's nice about game design, I guess. Yeah. Being able to still look back at your work and appreciate it years after you've finished it.
It's inspiring me. I might go back and listen to some old episodes and just be like, ooh, how are things going on episode 1 and 2, you know? Just to learn or feel, you know, re-explore those joys. Like, that's the whole point right here of the podcast, right? Is to spread joy and find how to, you know, not everyone's a game designer, not everyone's a programmer, not everyone understands what Java and C++ and Python are, and that's totally okay. I think the point here is to, maybe you picked up a little bit of information about that, right? Maybe you just learned that, like, ooh, what I do when I garden is I push myself. I try to grow something I've never grown before, and I can relate to this. I can, you know, when I do my art, I always hide a little pin in a pocket right here, and that's how you know it's my art. And like, that's great. Like, it's just about how we can relate to joys and find more joy in the things that we do. And I think that you've been very insightful onto your joy and very open. I appreciate that a lot. Is there,
like I said just before we started, I think it's better to be open with people and honest, and really just be able to share experiences and grow upon them as a community rather than as a singular. Like, lots of people that make content like yourself, or those that have done well, have had communities where they can share their mistakes, and then they all grow together and they grow quicker as well. And then it's not 10 people making the same mistake and learning from it. It's one person making that mistake and 10 people learning from it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is a very important part of being a part of any community, really, is that, you know, I think an important part is not just like what the community provides to you, but also like how you support that community, right? And in way, like, why it just, I think, goes to a full through line of why you're a part of this community. You shouldn't ever be a part of a community because of what they can give to you, right? That is a benefit, and sometimes you can think about that, but it should be about wanting to just like be a part of a community, and sometimes about what you can provide. Like, I can help out, and I would love to help people, and maybe along that be open to being helped.
Yeah, I think that it's always best. So even if you are an open person like myself, you still have to learn, even if you do learn the hard way, where people's boundaries are, and not everyone is as open as you may be. And I think that's just like an important life lesson, really. If you can recognize someone's boundary and then also be able to be open enough to share experiences with them that could help them to the limited understanding of their situation that you have, I think that's just always such a nice thing to be able to do for people, even if it doesn't relate, or you can't empathize with them, even if you can sympathize slightly and relate an experience that you had to try and cheer them up or to try and help them through a dark time. I think just really helps.
Being open to learning is so important, because you don't know, like, no one knows everything. And so if you have to be open. You have to, in order to live the most joyful life, you should be open. It comes down to like, you're open. And so you're able to, like, you know, even if someone comes out and they're like, I hated this part of your game, maybe you're like, oh, that's a punch, because I worked really hard on that. But it also seems like you might have the mind to take that and say, okay, they hated it, not because they hate me, not because they hated the game, because they didn't know the globe could spin. And so I should move the globe so that they know there's more to interact with. They only thought they could be on this computer, and they didn't know that the game was so much more than that, or that it had so much more personality. And so now I know to change that, and I can go in and add this tweak, and this tweak if I want. Or you can say like, that is a good opinion, and I appreciate you coming to play my game, but unfortunately this is what we're after here in this game. It isn't an open world experience, right? You're not supposed to be able to go outside, so you can't open the window or whatever. So it's just, I think that, long story short, it's really good that you're open to learning and to educating yourself about the process, and, you know, about things you could do better, and that you chase that down yourself. Improving always helps us, I think, feel more connected and joyful about our crafts, about our hobbies, about our passions than before.
Yeah, I very much agree with just everything you've said, and the stories you've connected to that, and like taking it upon my topic as well to relate. I just like lots of information there that I just greatly appreciate and really understand. And I think humans as well, just they have a natural curiosity, and to be able to be open to change, I think is just a great skill to have. And especially in like my world of game development, whenever a playtester comes back to me and says, I found the game really boring because I couldn't do this, this, and this, I said, well, actually, you could do this. You just didn't look at it from this way. Shows me that, oh, it wasn't as obvious as I thought it was.
I didn't look at it from that way.
Take notes. Yeah, it allows me to take notes and go, well, if that didn't work, how do I guide the player to interact with these different bits? And I remember the first test and iteration of the game that I've used as like reference to talk about the entire podcast. I did have lots of playtesters, as even the ones that know that I hide Easter eggs, come back and say, hey, look, we didn't understand how to find the Easter eggs. We thought it was quite boring that I couldn't explore them. From that point, I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. Because at first it wasn't that you shut down the PC, it was that you pressed escape on your keyboard. And because that it wasn't, it was more of a point and click event, it's more of a point and click story game.
You wouldn't know.
Yeah, it wasn't clear that the keyboard was even active and looking for escape. And that's when I first changed it to be shut down the PC. And then from there I was like, well, I've changed that, but now how do I guide people to find the shutdown button? And I thought, what if I put in the background of the computer a little note that says press escape or something like that, or press some Windows on your keyboard. Or for Apple users, for example, press some, I think it's like command, and it just opens up a little window. And then from there, they can mess around and find, like, oh, look, there's an app. And, oh, look, there's... So for the game music, it's just happened to be hidden in the files of this computer, for example. I think that really helps, and just having a little, like, pop-up sometimes, or
I mean, it could be, you know, as simple as like a post-it note on the corner of the computer screen that you don't really see until you kind of mouse over it, and it's like, remember to shut down computer when you're done, and you're like, oh wait, I can shut down the computer. That's cool. Or a little pop-up that's like, computer will restart in blank. Make sure that you click this button to restart properly. And you're like, oh, hold on. This is something that's possible. That's, I mean, there's so many, the wallpaper, that's a fantastic solution as well. There's so many ways to go about like half drawing attention, but not saying like, click this so that you can find the Easter egg, right? Like you want it to be, you still want them to find it and have that joy behind finding it, but it needs to be findable, because otherwise you'll be 20 years down the line and people are like, holy shit, I didn't know you could escape the computer.
Yeah.
There's a world.
My cat walked over my keyboard, and I found out that now I can look around the computer, and everyone on the game suddenly goes back to it. It's like, oh my god, I didn't know about this at all.
There's like 2 people that said the game was incredible, and I just don't get it. And now there's so much going on. My cat hit escape. Thank you, cat.
Learning from that to learn, because before then it was all story and you couldn't really do anything, and then slowly I started adapting my games so you could look around and you could find Easter eggs that were outside of the main story. And I think from there it just like allowed me to really appreciate every little detail of the game and not have it be a background PNG and rather it be an interactive world, even if it makes zero difference to the storyline.
Absolutely. I think that those little bits are very important to like a game, right? That people are finding Easter eggs 20 years later. Because just because even if you put like an arrow that says Easter egg here, that doesn't mean that everyone's going to find it. And it still could be, you know, that's how you make a game that people are playing 20 years down the line. They're like, check out this retro game. Everyone loves it. That's like, people still play the Stanley Parable because like it's simple.
Oh,
It's
love that game.
easy.
When I first found that game.
You can interact with the computer. You can jump out the window as an Easter egg. There's an achievement for getting out of the window. Like, that's so cool. And it's a glitch and there's nothing else to do and you reset and blah, blah, blah. But like the fact that I went through the whole game twice. It didn't know I could go out the window until one of my chat was like, there's a way, you just have to figure it out. And I don't know what that is. And so for like 30 minutes, we sat in that office and figured out the glitch to get up on a trash can and to jump to the desk and to like, you have to walk up on papers and like, it's just so specific. The steps you have to take to jump out this window to be reset that like you probably won't find it, but they gave you an achievement so that you know something's there. You just have to figure out where and what. And that is very intriguing to me. That's what gives the game, you know, replayability, especially when it's not, when we're not talking about a game like Skyrim, right? We're not talking about a game with hundreds of hours of content that you go back and you replay because you've played it for 200 hours. And so like, I'll still go back and play Skyrim sometimes because I just have played it forever. But I'll also go back and play Stanley Parable because the story was incredible and there's so much hidden that you want to. Like, even if I found it all, I want to experience that again. And that feeling was really good. And so maybe there's another Easter egg that we'll find 20 years later that's like a hidden achievement that none of us knew were there. And great, incredible. And maybe we won't. Maybe we found all the Easter eggs, but that's also still fun, like knowing that I can jump off this desk.
Something that I try to do that's not unique to me, but I don't see many games do, is I don't like people being able to look at the achievements before going into the game. Like on Steam, for example, you could look at the achievement page, you could load up the game, close it down immediately and look at the achievement page for the game. And see every single achievement and a short description of maybe how to get to it or and what's involved, what sort of steps you need to really take to get to a point where you could find it.
It's true. I had to do that with a few on the Stanley.
All of my games I have, so you have to play the game first. You have to complete a run of the game, for example, before you can see the achievements.
Achievements are unlocked.
So you still get the achievements as you play the game, but you can't see the page of all of the achievements until you have actually gone through the game. And I think that really allows people to play in their own style rather than being, oh, I'm playing for the achievements just so I can have another game in my library that's 100% complete.
Right. That makes sense.
I feel like you can play it organically in a sense. And having that sort of thing where people do play it the way that it's almost supposed to be played, I feel just really adds to my games and it allows you to immerse into the story a lot more, because those who come back from like a different games that I've made are like, oh, I know that they always hide some sort of Easter egg in the game, so I should look around and prod around, but people who are new to my games may not know as much about the Easter eggs. Instead, just like play from the perspective of, oh, I'm going to fiddle with a few things, but I really wanted to try out the story. I'm not coming to like find the Easter eggs. And I think that just really makes a game replayable as well, even in the short term. Is oh, I've played this game and there's a brand new thing on the menu that says achievements. I'm really curious to see what sort of achievements I could have found and just didn't.
And maybe go try to find them again.
Yeah, and one of my friends and I made this really just short story game to see like the concept of the game in HTML. We tried it out twice. We made two different versions. One where you could see all of the endings before you started the game. You know what you wanted to go for. And another one where you could you couldn't see it. And I think people just enjoyed it more where they maybe loaded up the game a few days later after completing it randomly, and then just happened to see that, oh look, there's an achievement page now. Yep. I should play the game again to see if I can get all of the achievements.
I think I would agree with that, because I played through, using the Stanley Parable as an example. I played through that after looking at the achievement page, because I knew that there were secrets, and I knew that I wanted to find some of them on my first run through to keep me enticed. And so, they only gave you like, get out of the window. So at some point, whenever he had told me about that, and then I saw it, I was like, okay, so I know that there's a window I'm trying to get out of. What window is that? But I agree with like an unlockable achievement page, maybe in some cases it's a file on the computer, right? I'm always just going to use that computer example. It doesn't obviously have to be that, but maybe in some cases it's like a file on the computer, or maybe it's the Easter egg of like, you open the file cabinet and now you've unlocked the achievements. Like, you have to come to the file cabinet off of the computer to look at your achievements, but they're here. And that's just so unique. Or, like in your example, you beat the game and now there's an achievement tab, and that you can like replay and try to unlock some of the ones you missed, but check out these ones you did get. That's pretty cool. Maybe you get a hat, or maybe your cursor is different. You get like a cursor unlock, or, the globe is special colors or something, like you can even trigger things off of that. I think that's fascinating.
It's a small change to the story that just adds to your playthrough and means that every time you play, you have a very slightly different game almost.
Right.
I quite enjoy that. One of the things that I just thought about while you were talking about that on the PC, is very well hidden, and on the achievements page, the title is just travel the world, and then the description is I think the description is book a flight to somewhere in the world. And anyone that wouldn't know how to find that achievement wouldn't know how to find that. Even if you read that, you wouldn't know how to find that. But if you go to the Internet Explorer and type in a URL that you can find in one of the files of the PC, it takes you to like almost like a mini airline website, and you can book a flight to wherever your globe landed to find other Easter eggs to get that one. And I think that's quite nice, to like knowing that all of the Easter eggs kind of link into a bit.
I would agree.
And then having the story almost reference it as well. Like I think on the story I've actually referenced the fact that one of the characters are always talking about booking a trip to go to just a country. I think it's like Italy or something, because they've never been and just always wanted to go. And then on the achievements tab, after you've played the game, you could notice that, there is an achievement for booking a flight. Maybe I should see how I can do that. And then they really explore. I think tutorials, though I do like them, and I find them quite helpful for some games, it's always nice to be able to find the thing yourself. I don't often find myself really wanting to look through a tutorial to complete an achievement. I find myself trying to avoid leaks and other bits of games. So when I do play the game, I find it more immersive, and I'm not like achievement hunting. I'm more immersed in the story, and then happen to find it and through it during another playthrough. I think that just really adds to the game.
I have just noticed that we've been going for quite a while, so I think that I'm gonna start to close up here. Is there maybe anything in this that we haven't talked about, programming, developing games, your ties to it, that you have thought of while we've been talking, or maybe beforehand that you wanted to talk about?
Just one thing really is like more into like open world games, because I've made I think one or two, but I never fully completed them. I really appreciate open world games like Minecraft, where you can just do whatever, but I also do like to have that story, like explore the game as Easter eggs, rather than knowing that whatever I can think of I can build. But lots of the things that I do in games, I either start out in like an art software or some sort of like another open game where I can almost like build the concept. So I've always just appreciated having a game like Minecraft where I know I could almost make a mini version of a game inside that game. I've always appreciated that, and that's just always something that I found to be quite fun, just being able to do whatever. And like you said with D&D, the open world of like adventure types where the story is around the characters' decisions rather than the characters' decisions around the story.
Right. Yeah, no, I think that's an intriguing point. I find that like I recently have just picked up like Oblivion, talk about like long form story games. As a when I launched the idea of playing Oblivion, it was long form playthrough. I'm gonna get every achievement for Oblivion, and then I launched Oblivion, and my roommate was at his computer like across the room from me, and he looked over and he peeked up above my monitor and he said, Oblivion doesn't have achievements on Steam. I was like, fuck, the whole reason I'm doing this is to achievement hunt through Steam. That was the whole purpose.
Yeah.
You know, then he like he was like, all right, well, give me a second. And he came up, he found an Oblivion achievement list, like all the things that you can do in Oblivion, like an Excel document that someone had made and sent it to me. So now I can play through my favorite game, one of my favorite like adventure games of all time. And with this little Excel document being like, all right, I have personally 100%ed Oblivion when it was on the Xbox and it did have achievements. I got them all. Now I'm doing it on Steam and I'm going to get all these achievements and I'm going to relive through it as an achievement Easter egg hunter. I'm seeing now as an adult, like, is there an NPC that has something weird to say that I couldn't have noticed as a kid or like didn't have context for? Or, you know, how often do they talk about different subjects that I didn't grasp when I was younger? It's just, you know, I think the best long form games have something for everyone, be that as long as they're, you know, a target audience member. If your target audience is from 13 to 30, then you want a connection that a 13-year-old can make and a connection that a 30-year-old can make. They don't have to be the same one, but you want, you know, that age range to be able to, or your, you know, your target market, and maybe some outside of that, to be able to connect in some form or fashion with that story so that they want to come back and keep playing. And if, especially at these younger ages, you connect at 13, maybe I come back, I play it at 18. And so, yeah, it's just, as I think that is interesting, having like Easter eggs that you connect to at different points in your life and maybe find because you weren't open to them before.
Whenever I make an open world aspect to my game, I always like to take inspiration from a real life setting. So for the game that I've been referencing, I sat down in my bedroom and a few of my friends' bedrooms and just for an hour took notes on everything I could find and everything. I'd be like, oh, I wonder if I can touch that. I wonder if I can spin that. I wonder if I can read that as a player, and just noted down everything on my notebook. And then when I was making the game, I looked through it and just circled any ideas. I was like, I can make that and it would work and it would be really fun. The globe came from an idea of, I think, my friend's bedroom. He had a world map and he scratched off everywhere he'd been in the world because he likes to travel a lot. I was like, I wonder if I can put that into the game, but not as a map, as like something else. And then I thought, oh, a globe would be quite a cool idea, and just having the ability to look and appreciate everything in a room, note it down, and then branch off ideas from that, I think is quite nice.
Yeah, really
and
immerse
you can really
yourself.
tell what ideas work well when you have loads of branches off of it. So I think one of the things that I had was, I think like he had like a box of stuff, my friend, in his room, just random stuff that he'd collected, and put it all into a box on his desk. And I noted down, almost like itemized everything in that box. I was like, oh, that would be really cool if I could do like a similar thing. And I wrote down like other things that you'd normally find on a desk that you could interact with. Pot of pens, a lamp, like almost like the Pixar lamp that just moves around and it's got all of the springs in different ways.
Right.
Or like a money jar, or like just another monitor, something, just or fan you could turn on, a window you can open, some blinds you can pull up.
Sure.
Just anything and everything that I could think of. I think that's just really nice to be able to appreciate the world that you live in right now and what you can take from that and what you can do with that.
Yeah.
And, like my sister she's still quite young, but she wants to do interior decorating when she's older, possibly. And I showed her the list of different things and that I'd noted down from other people's stuff, and she was like, I've never really looked at it that way. And she really appreciated just going through the list of things and being like, oh, that would work super well with that and this color of wall.
Right,
and,
right.
She made lots of concepts for just different rooms of like my friends and things like that for her own practice and just enjoyment.
Yeah.
I found it really interesting to have other people as well, like, oh, this would work really well with this, and
Being able to
familiarize myself.
Being able to sort of pull pieces of their joy from the work that you do on your own joy.
Yeah.
And getting, deriving joy from that. That is, it's great to be able to do and like look at a situation and, you're not like doing that so you could be like, so I can find joy, but it's great to like, you have a joy that spans several, I would say industries like, interior design, especially for this game. You had to interior design a room. You had to, learn how all that stuff sort of sits and you immersed yourself in it to do so. But it's unique, I think, having a through line across so many industries in a joy like this. As sort of a close up here, would you summarize your sort of your experience with this and the joy you find and sort of like a closing why for us?
I learnt programming and tinkering with the world around me from a very young age, and over the years I learnt about different things I could tinker with, and then from there I grew upon my skills, and now today I make games for fun, and for my work I do something that I love to do, and being able to just reminisce in my childhood memories of learning about these different skills is always something that brings me joy throughout my life.
Absolutely. I think that is a great place to sort of draw things to a close. I really appreciate you coming on out here. As I had mentioned in the beginning, I don't know if I was unmuted yet, but you're the first like person that I would consider like a listener guest. Like you reached out to me, you answered some of those like response questions on Spotify and on the podcast, and then you reached out and you were like, if there's a, guest spots. And I was like, yes, absolutely. There's guest spots. I would love to have listeners on and like, pick their joy. It doesn't need to be a friend I've had for 15 years, like my last guest. It doesn't need to be a family member. I want it to be open to everybody because I want to share everyone's joys. So it was absolutely fantastic having someone like yourself who listens to the episodes of the podcast here and there and like come on and have like a little bit of experience with it beforehand and be able to break things down so well.
Yeah, I remember when I first met you, I happened to just be viewing or sitting in one of my friends' streams that I'd met through streaming and like streaming groups. And I think you raided into this person's stream, and then from there we talked about like all of the things you did, and then you said how you wanted to start a podcast and had released an episode on Spotify. And from there I just started listening and then joined in your communities and interacted with everyone that you know. And I think from there it's just like really nice to be able to interact with different humans and share different experiences that we've all learned throughout these years. And now being on the podcast, being able to share my experiences with lots of different people, I think is really nice. Because I remember you saying how you just wanted anyone and everyone to be able to come on. And I think that's just really nice that you take time out of your day to share other people's experiences with whoever you can.
I really do appreciate that. I think that I may have mentioned this in some past episodes, but I think that my start of this may have begun in a little bit more of a selfish place as a maybe I can find a way to find more joy in my own life. But by like episode 2, even after having listened to and redoing episode 1, I was like, I think that anyone can relate why we find joy to their lives. And throughout these episodes, I have like thought more and more about that and trying to find like if someone didn't know, if someone's like, well, what's joy? Like, trying to explain that through the lens of all of the people I've had is, it's so insightful. It keeps me, I think, joyful in my own life. Sometimes I may wake up and be like in a rough mood, or I woke up on the wrong side of the bed, and just coming across the podcast on my phone somewhere, YouTube, Spotify, or I open the actual app to look at stats, I'm reminded that the purpose behind this is to spread joy and to find joy in places that we wouldn't look, we wouldn't think to look in each of our own lives, but being confronted with that might help shine a light on where we could find more joy. So yeah, I am very appreciative of you listening and coming out and being a part of it. Wholesome through line, I think.
Yeah, almost like full circle, come from just curious about what you've done, and then eventually it's come round to you listening to what I've done in my life.
Absolutely. Well, it's been absolutely lovely having you on. We're gonna close up here, but I'll reach out to you soon, and we'll talk about it.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you for having me on.
For everyone else, I want to thank you all for coming out and joining on this, the 15th episode of the PureJoy Podcast with my guest, Dusty Dazerling. We got to learn all about Dusty's joy, where he finds it in programming and developing video games and developing experiences, it sounds like, for people through what he does. I think that a lot of the stuff he was saying is stuff that is helpful to find joy for everyone. The more doing research, being able to overcome obstacles, that's huge. An obstacle, you're like, this is hard, I don't know how I'll do this. Researching and finding ways to do that and then doing it, you get that, you're like, boom, I've done it. You feel that success and that sense of joy, that sense of joy for the moment. And you feel so much better. And then you come back and you do it again. You're like, now I have this knowledge and I'll try this new thing. And you can pull in other pieces of knowledge to build up to something greater than you had imagined when you began. And you can find more joy in that. It seems like Dusty finds a lot of joys in this that I think that people of all walks of life could find joy in. And that is the community. He mentioned that the big part of this is sharing it with the artists, sharing it with his friends and the testers, and the conversations and the relationships that develop out of that. The excitement that he gets when he's just like, make this scene for me and here's the images I want, and they give it back and it's like exactly what he wanted or more than he could have expected is like there's a huge communal aspect portion of doing this. And there's joy to find there. There's joy to find in honing your skills and becoming more of an expert at it, learning something new, creating your vision. We all have these visions artistically, creatively in some form or fashion. Design of a room. When we play a game, we want it to be something different. We want it to be something more for us, right? Art, all these things, we have visions, but sometimes we don't quite know how to put them together. And I think that it's a very good lesson, a very good point of view to sometimes just do it. It may not come out 100%. It may not come out perfectly as your vision decreed, but you'll learn. You'll learn more what your vision wants. You'll learn more about how to do it. And the next time you try, it might be better. It might be so far better that this is your new vision, right? You passed your old vision because you learned enough to build atop that and make it better than it was. And that's incredible. I think that Dusty had a lot of really good insight into why this brings him joy. And I think how we can find joy in our lives from this, right? It doesn't need to be that we make games, but how can we look around in our life and appreciate what is there to derive joy from? It was absolutely lovely having Dusty on as a guest, as our first listener guest in, and it was fantastic. It was lovely. If anyone is interested, please reach out to me. You can email me through mduzgames22@gmail.com if you would like to come on and be a guest on the podcast. Here at the end, we're going to start going into some show notes. I'd like to give a little plug. I have started another podcast, folks. We're on episode 5. It is an actual play tabletop RPG podcast called Dungeons, Drive-Ins, and Dice. You can find it anywhere you find your podcast, just like the PureJoy Podcast. They're out there. We're playing Dungeon World. It's basically Dungeons and Dragons with a little bit more creative flourish in how you do what you do. Yeah, so come check out that podcast. New episodes are out every other week. I want to give thanks to the artists that allow me to use their music, right? I want to give thanks to MioWnize and Merda, who will let me use their music in the intro, the outro, and the transitions. I really appreciate them. it adds such a big level to this podcast, having their music on it, and I'm very appreciative of them for allowing me to use it. I'd like to thank Dusty for coming out and being an incredible guest on this episode. This is definitely the longest episode. We're gonna have a lot of cutting to do, so I appreciate you all, and we're gonna draw this episode to a close. But thank you all for joining on this, the 15th episode of the PureJoy Podcast, and we'll see you next time, folks.